Hello, welcome. This is video 19. It's going to be on extinction and this acronym here, HIPCO. So we'll start with extinction first. Definition of extinction for us is going to be when the population cannot adapt to changing environmental conditions. So eventually something in the environment might change. Maybe it's the temperature, maybe it's the amount of precipitation, maybe it's the amount of prey available. Something is changing in the environment and the species unable to adapt. In time, their population will die out and we won't see them anymore. And so the phrase background extinction refers to what happens naturally. And so normally throughout the history of the Earth, species have gone extinct at a pretty low rate, but pretty much consistently throughout time. That rate is about 0.0001% of species going extinct. All right, so it's a very low percentage right here. Some things that lead species to go extinct or make them susceptible to extinction are down here in the bottom. And so any of these different characteristics kind of means trouble for the species. And take a look at those. You can pause the video if you'd like to read them, but I'm going to keep moving on a little bit. So humans and extinction, what's the cause or the correlation, if there is any, between humans and the extinction we're seeing? So throughout time, these lines, the blue one represents marine organisms, the red one terrestrial. Throughout time, you can see the number of families, all right? So this is almost, or it'll correspond nicely to the number of species. And you can see generally the trend is an upwards trend, but at certain spots we see some dips. Like we've got a nice little dip right here where we had this negative slope. That would be a period of extinction or mass extinction, in fact. This one here is very well pronounced, very large dip. In species there, we've got a little small dip right here in our marine organisms. And if you look all the way up here, the scale on the bottom here is millions of years. So if you look all the way up here in the last so many years, there is another dip happening. This terrestrial organisms are dropping along with marine organisms. And so the scientific consensus is that humans are reducing the biodiversity on Earth. The current background extinction rate is 0.1%, which is about 1,000 times faster than the average throughout history. Remember, that average throughout history is 0.0001%. So it's sped up by about 1,000 times right now. And the thought is that humans are causing a large part of this. The number is actually projected to rise to as much as 1.0%, or another 10 times, 10,000 the normal background rate. If this number is achieved, this is a lot of species. 1% is a huge number. We'd be looking at something like 10,000 species for every million species on Earth, and that'd be per year. So this is a very huge number in terms of extinction rates, and it's really hoped that it's never achieved, but that's the way it's trending currently. So some terminology that'd be good to know here. We've got the IUCN. The IUCN which stands for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And so they're one of the ones in charge of designating these classifications to the different species. And so endangered means that there's very few left. These are soon to be extinct unless some really drastic measures are taken. The other classification is the threatened/vulnerable. So they're still available for this one, but the population's declining. And you're welcome to look up the IUCN. It's called the Red List, is the species that are in the red or in the most danger. But I don't think you need to know specific species for this, just some examples perhaps for each one. So why do we really care about this? This is one of those questions that is easy to ask, but a little more difficult to answer. So there's really two main reasons why we should care about biodiversity, besides the it looks really nice. So one of them is for the use value. The use value is how can we benefit from having them around. And so there are a couple ways we can benefit from having them around. The two biggest are the economic and ecological services that they provide. Some economic services might be like food crops, would have a great economic benefit towards us. It might be medicinal purposes. So you've got the researchers in the jungles looking for new compounds that could help out create new drugs, stuff like that. Besides those two, we're looking at building materials like wood or paper would be part of economic services. And then some ecological services would be things like pollination. Bees are responsible for pollinating, so that helps with the food. Pest control is another one that is very useful to us, right? Birds are going to eat insects, bats will eat mosquitoes. Those pests are eliminated by nature, these ecological services. Water and air purification by plants is another big one. Grass roots out in the Midwest are responsible for preventing soil erosion. So there's a lot of useful values. The other ones are for the non-use values, just to simply allow them to exist. And so this brings in some kind of ethical questions. What is our real role in the world? Are we here to preserve and protect the species? How do we decide which ones are more important than others? For instance, the orangutan up here is a really heavily protected and well-known endangered species because it's kind of this big ticket item, right? It's very big, it's cute, everyone likes orangutans, they look kind of sad and like dumpy little old men. So we want to protect them because we feel bad for them. But other things like plants are just as endangered. In fact, plants, there are more endangered plant species than any other type of species. They're not really these big ticket items that are going to sell tickets at a ball or are going to be able to sell posters or that kind of stuff. So we're really kind of stuck with that ethical decision here. Which ones deserve to exist? Which ones look pretty, and why are we only protecting the pretty ones? Which ones do we want to leave for the future generation? So there's some issues with this one here, but in my personal opinion, I think everything deserves a chance to survive, and if something's affecting that and we can change it or make adjustments to, why not? Forest is part of this section. It's more so in Chapter 10, but I wanted to pull out some ecological and economic services for you because I think that's really the important part of the last slide. So we're talking about forests. What do they provide for us? These are all the ecological services. Their roots are going to reduce soil erosion. So when we cut down the trees, there's nothing holding this soil in place. It's just kind of loosely there. And so wind, water can easily blow it away. They help purify water and air. So the air, they bring in carbon dioxide, they release oxygen, and that's good for us. They also purify the water. They take water up through their roots, right? And as it rises up through the trunks, it goes out to the leaves and in this case the evergreen needles, and we get that transpiration where the water leaves the stomata and enters the atmosphere. So it's one way that they purify water as well. They can also influence the local and regional climate. These trees are going to absorb a lot of sunlight, and that heat's going to go through photosynthesis rather than kind of building up. If this were a large paved lot, remember that would absorb a lot of the heat and keep that area warm, where they're using the heat here for that chemical reaction. And they also store atmospheric carbon. So all of these logs here in the front, in the foreground of the picture, and the trees themselves in the background, they're all made up of carbon that used to be up here in the atmosphere in the form of CO2. That carbon is being sequestered or removed, and it's helping to reduce the greenhouse effect in the atmosphere until we cut them down and end up burning them. So some of the services, what can they do for us? How can we make money off of them? We can burn them, right? If we burn them, that's fuel. It can heat our home. We can use it to spin a turbine and generate electricity. But fuel is one of them. Lumber as a building supply. So these trees could be turned into boards, and you could build your house out of that board, and then you could sell that house to somebody and make some money off of it as well. Pulp for paper, right? Fernandina Beach has the paper mill up there. If you've ever seen it, they've got a huge pile of ground up trees and filings ready to go to make paper, and so it's a good resource there. And then recreation, right? We could go out into this forest out here and find a hiking trail and take some pictures of wildlife and have a good time. And so you can monetize that. You can charge people an entrance to the park. You can sell hiking equipment, and that hiking equipment would be then useful because you've got somewhere to use it. People will buy it, and you can make money off of it. So they provide ecological and economic resources. So what speeds up the rate? This is where HIPCO is going to come into play. And here you'll see the acronym HIPCO. The first one is the biggest one. Habitat is huge. And we're talking about any of these three things: destruction, degradation, and fragmentation. And so what's going on is the forests or the swamps or the coastal marshes, these are being turned into other purposes, where maybe we're cutting down the trees for a palm oil plantation, maybe we're filling in the wetlands so we can build the city of Jacksonville. At some extent, the habitat's being destroyed, and by reducing that, you're limiting the area that that species has to survive. This is the number one problem with our extinction rates rising, is the loss of habitat. And it may not even necessarily be the straight destruction and degradation. Fragmentation plays a huge role in this. If you picture, let's say here's a map over here of the territory of our species, let's call it a tiger. So this is a large area. They require a big region. They're very territorial. They need a lot of big prey, and so they cover a large area. If we were to go ahead and build a road right through the middle of this, well, around that road, we'd probably build a farm then, or some people might put some houses, and let's say over here, we're putting in a little shopping mall or something. So we've essentially eliminated this use of land right here. We still have viable tiger habitats on either side, but one of these sides may not be enough to support a whole tiger, right? Maybe they needed this large of an area to begin with, and by cutting it in half, we've reduced the number of tigers that can be here. Now, no tigers can survive in this green circle because their habitat's been broken too small, right? You might have a tiger trying to live over here, but if it crosses over this road or goes into these people's properties, it could get shot or it could get hit by a car. So fragmentation is a big part of this, even though it's not outright total destruction. We're not cutting down the trees, salting the land, and burning out the knapweed. Another big one is invasive species. So there's two ways they get in, either intentionally or accidentally. Accidentally would be like the knapweed, right? It came in with the European crop seeds, and it's kind of there now. Deliberately, this would be like the cane toads example. We bring them in to combat a pest, and it ends up creating a new problem for us. Invasive species are another big role. It's not quite as big as habitat destruction, degradation, and fragmentation, but this does play a huge role, especially on the island of Hawaii. And you'll see the statistic here, 90% of the species that are endangered on Hawaii are there because of threats from introduced species. And so it kind of raises the question, why are the Hawaiian Islands so vulnerable where we're only seeing 40% of the species for the rest of the United States? And so think about that question. I think it'd be a good one for us to discuss tomorrow, why you think that the Hawaiian Islands are so vulnerable. Population, all right, human population in especially. So we're talking humans here. When we are expanding the human population so greatly, we have needs for more land diverted to human use. It might be for farms, it might be for roads, it might be for mining, anything like that. Anything that's going to require land for human uses is destroying environment, and we're taking it away from the natural world that could support a viable ecosystem. We also put a bigger pressure on the ecosystem services like water purification. And so during or around a lot of developing countries especially, you see really polluted water supplies. That causes species to go extinct, right? The aquatic fishes are number 2 right behind plants in terms of number of species that are endangered or threatened. That water pollution is really tough for fish to survive in because they can't avoid it. They can't leave the water to get away from the pollution. This is a picture of our 7 billionth person on Earth. And so it's kind of an impressive number, and that number is only rising, as we talked about in previous chapters. Pollution is another big one here. Pesticides, right? So if we're spraying pesticides on our crops, we're accidentally hitting honeybees. And so a lot of honeybee problems come from unintended pesticide use. And the honeybees are really vital to providing food source for us. And so that's one form of pollution affecting a species, pushing them towards extinction, right? 20% is a fifth of the honeybee population being lost to pesticide use. Another good word to talk about and include in this section is bioaccumulation. And this was the big problem with DDT, because DDT is fat soluble. It doesn't leave the body once it enters the body. And so these microorganisms, the algae and those shrimp, would pick up the DDT from their daily going about, right? The algae would bring it into their cells as the DDT was dissolved in water and entered the waterways, and then the shrimp would eat the algae, and they'd eat a lot of algae over their life, and so they may only pick up a very small amount of DDT per piece of algae, but over their entire life they're eating an awful lot of algae, and so it builds up inside of them. It can't leave the shrimp because it's accumulating in their fats. And then as the shrimp get eaten by fish, right, those fish are picking up even more because they're eating a lot of these DDT-infected shrimp, and so it builds up even more in the fish. Even though the fish, being a larger organism, would have a higher tolerance to it, at this point you're getting all the DDT from the shrimp plus all the DDT from the algae, and so it's really starting to add up to a lot of DDT in the system. And then it continues up the food chain, and it even got as high as some humans, right? The big one that DDT is famous for are the bald eagles, because they were the ones that were really negatively affected by it. But there are even cases, eagles, you know what I'm trying to type there. There are even cases where humans were having some negative side effects that we can't attribute purely to DDT, but the correlation was pretty strong. And so bioaccumulation is a big problem with pesticides, with fertilizers, any of this type of water pollution that can get into the water. Typically, it's possible to bioaccumulate, especially if it's fat soluble. Climate change is the next one, this big C. So climate change, this could be a couple different things. Big one, warming of the oceans around the coral reefs. The coral reefs have very narrow tolerances for temperature. And so the general consensus is that the Earth is warming up and the oceans are warming up especially. And so that is leading to die-offs of coral. Another one is the polar bears, dependent upon sea ice. Right, as those ice sheets decrease, their hunting grounds are being reduced and reduced and reduced. And if you're shrinking their habitat, it can support less of them. There's less hunting availability, and so only some polar bears are going to survive. And so there's a pretty large decrease here in the next 45 years, 30 to 35%. And then the last one is over exploitation. And so this one is typically attributed to being big, tasty, slow, or valuable parts. And these species are ones that we are actually doing the killing or the removing of. And so Finding Nemo, the movie dedicated to kind of protecting the fish and the coral reefs and the negative impact that humans have, actually ended up in a really huge boost in clownfish sales, to the point where clownfish shortages were happening around the world. So it kind of this unintended consequence of the pet trade, but these were seen as valuable things. People wanted them. They saw the movie, their kids were like, oh, I want a little Nemo, and so they went out and got them, and we reduced the population of clownfish due to it. Food and other valuable parts, right? Our rhino friends we saw at White Oak, the valuable part here being the horn, that makes them a target for poaching. Other things, ornamental plants. Some people will take plants from the wild because they want them around their house or they want them planted in their garden, and that's considered over-exploitation. Big and tasty, another good category or another good animal example here is the bluefin tuna, right? Very large tuna with very valuable sushi quality meats being over-exploited because there's not really any ownership to them. They're not located in any one country. They're out in the open ocean, and there's no real way to control who's fishing for how many. So it's a good tragedy of commons example because they've got these characteristics. We do over-exploit them. So how can we reduce? There are two laws or treaties to be aware of here. The first one is CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. This is a treaty, international treaty, does not allow the trading of these species. It classifies about 800 of them that are not allowed to be traded, and then there's probably about 12,000 or so that are potentially going to be added in the future if their current trends continue. The ESA is the U.S. law, so this is very similar to CITES, except it's a U.S. law. It forbids federal agencies from carrying out projects that could harm endangered species, except for the Department of Defense. All right, so we can test our bombs in the ocean, and it doesn't matter if we're killing the whales or anything like that. It also makes it illegal for Americans to engage in these activities. That would be foreign or domestic, so here in the United States or elsewhere. And then it has been amended to help landowners protect endangered species on their lands. And so that could be things like money to keep a critical habitat preserved rather than developing it for farmlands or who knows what. So those are the two laws to be aware of here. They are similar, but make sure you keep the difference between them. CITES is international. ESA is a domestic U.S. federal law. And that would do it for the presentation. Thanks for watching. Sorry I went a little long here. 20 minutes is a lot to ask, but hopefully there's a lot of good information. So please come ready to discuss and with notes. Thank you.